Right. This is a four-part video on Ballynahinch buildings. So in part 3, I told you how Ballynahinch underwent the biggest expansion in its history. Massive expansion of housing and a lot of it on the periphery of Ballynahinch, so the boundary expanding. And that expansion couldn't have happened if it hadn't been for the new invention of the internal combustion engine and cars and lorries. Ballynahinch couldn't have expanded without those developments. So what I want to do in the fourth and last part is to say how Ballynahinch was affected by the expansion of its housing and how it was affected by the impact of commuting and the rise of the motor car, and how Ballynahinch coped with that situation, or how Ballynahinch didn't cope with that situation. So here we are, part 4, and the theme here is regeneration. Now, go back to the bomb in the 1980s, and it's a sort of a watershed, and High Street here changes after the bomb. Maybe it was going to change anyway, but certainly you mark, you can see a change after that bomb in the 1980s. 1968, all these businesses along High Street were family owned, and they were individual trades. Each shop concentrated on one thing: grocery or greengrocery, or clothing, or jewellery, or shoes. All individual trades, all owned by one family owner. But you'll see that changing. So here's an example. You had outfitters. So I said that Ballynahinch was self-sufficient. So those outfitters, they would sell you clothes. Harper's would actually make you a suit. So you didn't have to go to, if you wanted to buy a suit nowadays, you go off to Sprucefield and you buy it off the peg at Marks and Spencer's. Up until the 1950s and 60s, Harper's would measure you and make you a suit. Same with ladies outfitting. There's McCrickards did nothing but clothing. Rachel Hamilton up Church Street, she sold nothing but shoes. Pat Daffy on Dromore Street, he did shoe repairs, as did Willie Creaney on High Street. Trades which disappeared, you don't bother repairing shoes anymore, you just buy a new pair of sneakers. Then you had grocers, Rafe McMullen and Andy Shaw, Jim Davison. So a big change coming for all those shop owners and trades. The Ballynahinch bomb was 1985, and Marks and Spencer's opened at Sprucefield 1989. So from then on, you saw a lot of trade being diverted from Ballynahinch to Sprucefield. It was so handy, and that affected all the shopkeepers in High Street. As an example, this was Rafe McMullen's grocery store, but it was replaced by Iceland. And Iceland displaced a lot of those grocers, Davison's, Shaw's, Coulters. No longer family-owned shops, but national chains moving in. Coulters butchers ceased to be a butchers. For a while it became a restaurant. And Andy Shaw's grocery shop became a charity shop for Bernardo's, and most recently it became a pizza parlour. So all those shops around this junction were feeling the pressure from chains like Iceland moving in, or the competition from Sprucefield. This very busy shop of Davison's started off as a grocer shop, was a pub, had a motor garage up the entry, had petrol pumps on the side of the pavement. Much reduced so far as its commercial significance. It's still in existence, but it's now a minor part of the commercial scheme. So commercial activity which went on at this site has now moved elsewhere. Now, all the new developments depend on the motor car, and you're not going to get planning permission for a new development unless you can provide parking. So if Iceland develop a new superstore on High Street, well, where are they going to get parking? Now, the thing was that behind all the shops on High Street, there were gardens. So Lidl had an idea. They would buy up the gardens and they would convert the gardens to parking. So that's how that's how Iceland solved the parking problem. And the same with Lidl. They wanted to build a new supermarket, but where were you going to accommodate the cars? So the answer was they built their new warehouse. They built a Lidl store on top of where there used to be a railway warehouse, and where there was another railway warehouse, then they converted that to parking. So every new development in Ballynahinch, part of it is dictated by how you accommodate vehicles. Same thing out the Lisburn Road. SuperValu in the 1960s built a new supermarket at the bottom of High Street, but it had to have parking. So they put parking beside SuperValu, and then around the corner, on the other side of the Methodist Church, the parking was extended there as well. Now, it used to be that running down to the river, this was all marshland, and it was useless for agriculture. It grew nothing but rushes. And it flooded a couple of months in the year, so it was useless wasteland. But with the rise of the motor car, this wasteland suddenly becomes desirable, and SuperValu shows the way. Yeah, you put a lot of filling into the wasteland, and you turn it into car parking. Baptist Church made the same discovery. They expanded their church massively, but that means, where do you put the cars? The answer is you buy bogland from your neighbours and you turn it into car parking. So this is an interesting development, and I got Rod Little to run the drone out over this site to show you how the bogland is developed into parking. 2014, the council came up with a master plan. How could they clean up Ballynahinch and make it more interesting? So they did a lot of streetscaping in 2014. So trees were planted, plant boxes, masonry plant boxes were erected, and seating in between. So that kind of exercise has been carried out for a number of towns in County Down. And they wondered if they could sell Ballynahinch history to attract in the tourist. The Ballynahinch murals, they're commemorated in the plaque on the left-hand side, and then there's a metal sculpture up in the square. So if you go and examine it, it tells you about Ballynahinch history, Ballynahinch churches. There's Sir George Rawdon, the founder of Ballynahinch. There's the windmill, there's the railway, and there's Montalto House. So you try and interest tourists in Ballynahinch history. The trouble with the Battle of Ballynahinch, you only celebrate it once every 100 years. So it's not like Downpatrick where you celebrate St. Patrick's Day every year. The Ballynahinch heritage has a limited appeal. Restoration was a theme once you hit the 21st century. I said that a lot of the core of Ballynahinch was being eroded because a lot of development was on the periphery of Ballynahinch, so that meant the old core started to decay. So, and among the decay was the market house. So you can see how it had fallen into disrepair. Along came some money from the International Fund for Ireland, and they first of all they stripped the plaster off it, and then you discovered what the old market house was like. That in below that plaster there were 4 arches, and they belonged to an original Georgian market house. So those arches were exposed. Back in the 1700s, they were left open so you could drive a cart in. You didn't leave them open now, you glazed them. But you took the market house back to what it looked like in 1792, whenever it was built. A lot of work to be done. Just the thing had to be taken to bits and put up again. So a lot of money raised and a very successful bit of regeneration, and the President of Ireland, no less, was brought along for the opening and for the launch. So magnificent achievement. But it is okay raising a huge amount of money and developing an old heritage building like that. But that's not enough. Heritage buildings are expensive to maintain and to run. So you always have to generate an income to keep them going. And that didn't work out with the market house. So it never generated sufficient income to cover its outgoings. So within 6 years, the market house went bankrupt. It had to be handed over to the council, and that's to 2008. So it was a continual drain on council finances, and they didn't like it one bit. So more recently, they've handed it over to a charity. So it's a charity who runs a restaurant, and the restaurant has now moved into an historic building. But it's expensive to maintain an historic building, and it remains to be seen if this charity can handle the expenses of maintaining it. So that is the problem. You can make a special effort and raise special funds and resurrect an historic building, but can you raise enough finances to sustain it indefinitely? You had the same experience with Coulters Butcher's Shop. Listed building, architect designed, very interesting inside and outside. Somebody came along and snapped it up as a restaurant, so it was rechristened the Bull and Ram. And you can see the beautiful interior, and you can see how it was attractive as a restaurant. And very popular venue, famous. Here it was reviewed in the Guardian in England, no less, and it was situated deep in farming country in County Down. This is a shrine to prime cut shorthorn steak. Wonderful. Trouble is, it was running on electrics, which were put in the 1950s. And the demands that the restaurant placed on the electrics burned the electrics out. Now, if you want to replace that, you can't work on an historic building. The planners will make big demands on you how you replace those electrics. So every owner or every potential purchaser since runs into this problem that it's going to cost a fortune to put proper electrics in there. So it is hung on the market for years now, and nobody can handle it. So that is the problem with regeneration and restoring old buildings. Bit more successful out at the spa. You used to have 3 pump houses at spa and a pump in each to pump up the spa waters. So Harvey Bicker copied the outline of one of the pump houses, and he built a replica pump house in the back garden. And then he went to the old pump houses and he rescued the original pumps which were installed in 1810, and he installed those pumps in his new pump house. So they no longer pump water, but there is a bit of genuine restoration, and you have restored a bit of spa history and at no ongoing expense. Talking about restoration, the most successful restoration in Ballynahinch has occurred at the Montalto estate. So I showed you that in the 1970s, the Montalto house was getting into trouble, that the roof was leaking and the interior was starting to rot, and half of it was burned down in an accidental fire. Now, the estate was bought by the Wilsons, and they took Montalto House to bits and did a complete top to bottom renovation. Now, you need very deep pockets to do a renovation like this, but everything that could possibly go wrong, they met it head on. So from the slates down to the basement, everything was renovated. So anything that can give trouble for the next 80 years, well, it's not going to give trouble. Everything has been thoroughly refurbished. And you can see how detailed the work was. There's the joists on the floor. I told you they were starting to rot. So they were all treated, and the joists weren't taken out. The joists were reinforced. So where they had started to sag, you saw new white wood being attached to the joist. Where the plaster fell on the ceiling, you had to take down the plaster, and you had to replace the woodwork up at the ceiling before you reinstalled the plaster ceiling. Same on the outside, complete overhaul of the roof and the stonework outside. So then finally, millions later and years later, after the renovation, you have the house back to what it looked like originally. So originally the Wilsons used it as a private house, but then the family grew up and got married. The kids started families of their own. So then the house is too big for the parents living on their own. So what they do is turn it into a high-class hospitality venue. So if you want to have a wedding, you can have a wedding in the house, and you can hire the house for the night. So what you do is your guests stay overnight in the Montalto bedrooms. So the house and its valuable architecture have been preserved. But we found out the problem of just preserving an historic building. You also have to produce an income to keep on maintaining that building. So the solution at Montalto is turn the house into a hospitality venue, and that's guaranteeing large fees to keep the building running. They repeated that formula with the carriage rooms. So you wonder where the name the carriage rooms came from. Well, the carriage rooms were the garages when you didn't have cars and you had carriages drawn by horses. Then this is the garage that you used for the carriage. So this is the kind of carriage which went into those garages. So this carriage you can see on display at Mount Stewart, and this is Lord Londonderry's carriage. Lord Londonderry came visiting at Montalto. His daughter married into the Montalto cars. So when he arrived at Montalto, he would come in this coach, and then that coach would be accommodated overnight in the carriage rooms. So you see the doors for the carriage rooms, they're quite high, so you can back a carriage in through the door with the coachman still perched on top. Now, what do you do with an old historic building? Do you knock it down and just turn it into something modern? So Montalto are pretty ingenious about this. They think sideways, and they think, right, historic building, preserve it, but what use is it? So they came up with the idea of all the intervening walls between the carriage garages. They knocked those intervening walls down, and then the carriage rooms were turned into one long room, and then you turn that into a function room. It's a great place to hold a wedding reception. And if you want to have an income, then you're going to earn plenty of money from the wedding guests. So this is how you preserve an historic building, and at the same time keep it viable. You generate an income so that you can always maintain your historic building. Montalto needed a lot of horses in its heyday, horses for transport, horses for agriculture. So there are a couple of stable blocks at Montalto. What do you do with them? Well, again, you hold on to them and you reconfigure them. So next door to the stable blocks, they installed a restaurant. And then next to the restaurant are the old stables, and they're divided into smaller rooms for smaller functions. So always, sure, preserve your old buildings, but make sure you work out a way to generate an income to preserve them. There are other buildings in Ballynahinch which are ripe for the same kind of conservation. So here is the late Tom Harris. This is his mill out Church Road. So up for sale, and I think actually it's been sold. There was a sale agreed sign on it. But whoever buys it will not be allowed to alter it. It's a listed building. So it can be you can turn it into some kind. It can be turned into some kind of. It can be a hotel or a restaurant, but the original shape of the building has to be maintained. And it's ripe for redevelopment. The mill wheel is still there, and actually the mill wheel is still functioning. And the millstones are still there. Tom didn't use the millstones anymore, but if you want a genuine historic mill, then all the parts are still there. So again, we've got some video recorded of that site, and we'll include that in this slide presentation. Another site which should be preserved in Ballynahinch is the old hotel. So this was McLeigh's Hotel. There's the gateway onto High Street, and then behind the gateway is the stable yard. So as I told you previously, before you had the railway in Ballynahinch, Ballynahinch was connected to Belfast by stagecoach. If you're coming through from Newcastle, your horses were tired by the time they reached Ballynahinch, so you had to have a change of horses to take your stagecoach onto Belfast. So it was the fresh horses would be available at McLeigh's, and they would be kept in the stables. If you're looking for the stables, they're not there any longer because this stable yard was renovated during World War I. So all the floors were pulled up and refloored, and it was used for accommodation for the American soldiers who were based in Ballynahinch before they went off to D-Day. The predecessor to McLeigh's Hotel was Armstrong's Inn, which is on this site. So it's in Armstrong's Inn that the United Irishmen met in the 1790s in the run-up to the Battle of Ballynahinch. And one of the most famous United Irishmen, Wolfe Tone, he visited here in 1792, stayed here overnight in Armstrong's Inn and got full drunk. Was invited up to Montalto the next morning and went up to Montalto with a thumping hangover. With the expansion of Ballynahinch on the periphery, the trouble is the core of Ballynahinch is getting hollowed out. This is Harmony Way, known locally as Katie's Entry. So you can see about the 1980s, Katie's Entry was getting into a bad state. The tarmac had gone and the drainage was bad and the place was flooding. So you try operating a business with a street like that outside. But the centre of Ballynahinch is gradually picking up, and all those gaps are being filled. So down Katie's Entry, you got the Pentecostal church established on the main street, and they've built a new cafe on the entry. And Ballynahinch has got a rake of new cafes. It used to be we only had chip shops, but now we've got a lot of decent cafes and restaurants. On the other side of Katie's Entry, you've got McGowan's Fashions, of course. They extended down the entry, and what used to be Harmony Hall on Katie's Entry, it's now being replaced on the left by the new Cadet Hall. So the core of Ballynahinch, which was central core of the town, which was decaying a bit, is gradually being restored and coming round. The arrival of the motor car had a huge impact on Ballynahinch. The arrival of the internet is having an impact as well. The internet has wiped out all of our banks. We no longer have any banks in Ballynahinch because most people now do their banking on the internet and don't do it by physically visiting a bank branch. It's no longer viable for the banks to keep their buildings open. So all Ballynahinch banks are now closed, and those fine buildings are being repurposed. And we saw the impact of the motor car in Ballynahinch, but we haven't yet seen the eventual impact of the internet. I said that most people found employment outside Ballynahinch, but the thing is, the internet makes it possible for you to run your business in Ballynahinch and have connectivity via the internet. An awful lot of people are working from home, and some businesses no longer have offices. All all their employees are working from home. Offices have become redundant. So there's a possibility for Ballynahinch there that that if you can work from home, then you can work from home in Ballynahinch, and you don't need to commute. Ballynahinch hasn't really coped with the increase in road traffic. Here's Walter Harris writing in 1744, and he says, Ballynahinch is the principal and indeed the only place of note in the barony of Kinlarty, and it stands near the centre of the county on a little river. It lies in the midst of the great roads leading from Lurgan, Dromore, Lisburn, Hillsborough to Downpatrick, and from thence to the eastern coast. So nothing's changed there. It's still in the centre of the great roads. And he says, all access to it is troublesome and unpleasant, and it is justly complained of by travellers who can only hobble through the narrow causeways. Nothing changes. The travellers are still finding that access to Ballynahinch is troublesome and unpleasant, and you get traffic strangulation. From the terrible condition of the roads, it has obtained the name of Machardrole, the field of difficulties. So if you're trying to get through Ballynahinch on a bank holiday, it's a field of difficulties. It's still a route centre. It's still badly served by the streets running through Ballynahinch. Those streets can't cope with that traffic. If you're coming from Belfast or Lisburn and you want to go to Newcastle, Kilkeel or Castlewellan, you've got to come through Ballynahinch. You can't avoid that. Or if you're coming from Kilkeel, Newcastle or Castlewellan and you want to go to Belfast or Lisburn, you're stuck. You've got to go through Ballynahinch. We know we need a bypass, but we've been talking about the bypass for 50 years. Here was the Down Recorder in 2014. It said, high hopes of an early start to the Ballynahinch bypass. Well, that was 10 years ago, and it's still as far away as ever. So this is the typical scene in Ballynahinch on a Friday evening with queues of traffic miles away at the Belfast Road. You get the same feature on bank holidays with all the Belfast traffic trying to get through to Newcastle. Now there is the same junction, the photograph at the bottom, there's the same junction in the 1950s. Now can you imagine trying to hold a cattle market in that junction nowadays? It's out of the question. The car is dominant. Everything gives way to the commuters. There's no way you could close that junction for a day for a cattle market. So that shows you the big change in 60 years enforced by the rise of motor traffic. So as I've said, Ballynahinch is now a dormitory town. We're not unique in the growth of housing. Every other town in County Down has had a huge expansion of housing, and it's the same pattern. It's bungalows built in estates on the periphery of those towns. And we're not the only town to have traffic jams. Try Downpatrick. Ballynahinch, you wouldn't say that it's an attractive town. It's got some attractions, like the Montalto estate. But Ballynahinch is attractive in that it's close to other attractions in Belfast, Lisburn, Sprucefield, Newcastle, the Mournes or Strangford Lough. So it might have few enough attractions, but it's still an attractive place to live because it's close to other attractions. And then, of course, there's less competition for housing in Ballynahinch, and our house prices are cheaper. So it's cheaper to live in Ballynahinch than it is to buy a house in Lisburn or Belfast. So Ballynahinch is attractive in that it has lower house prices. So this talk is about Ballynahinch housing. So let's contrast the housing, the kind of housing you had in 1900 or that you had 100 years later in 2000. In 1900, the typical house was a terrace house on the street in Ballynahinch. Would have had a coal fire. It didn't have a flushing lavatory. It had a dry lavatory out in the back garden. It didn't have running water. The drinking water was carried from a street pump. For communication, you had a good postal service. The postman came 3 or 4 times a day. So if you posted a postcard in the morning, you could have a reply from somebody by 3 o'clock that afternoon. In 2000, big changes. The typical Ballynahinch house is now a bungalow in the suburbs. You don't live in the street, you live in an estate out on the edge of Ballynahinch. You don't have a coal fire, you have oil-fired central heating or maybe gas. You have mains, water and sewage. You've got a lawn out the front and a garage with a car stored in it. And for the postal service isn't so good. In fact, it's a lot worse than it was in Victorian times. But it's compensated for by internet connection. So you have instant communication by email and by mobile phone. So that the GPO are now doing away with the red telephone boxes. You don't need them anymore. Everyone's got a mobile. There's been a shift from the countryside. In the 1950s, if you drove around country districts, you'd come across crossroads, and that's where the local grocery store was. And then beside the grocery store, you'd have a couple of petrol pumps. So that's where farmers could do their shopping. But all those country stores and petrol pumps have disappeared. So nowadays, if you want to do your shopping or buy your petrol, you have to come into the town. There's been an increase of affluence and life expectancy. So conditions in 1900 weren't great, and they didn't get any better in the 1950s. You got diseases like tuberculosis, which could wipe out whole families. So we're an awful lot better in 2000 than we were in 1900. And we still talk about austerity and poverty, but those are relative terms. People in the 1900s simply would not be able to believe the level of affluence that we have now. We've kept a good number of our historic buildings, and if you want to know the value of the history of Ballynahinch, well, there's the list there of buildings which are important, and we've lost a few, but not too many. The Carr Estate Office was burned down in 1937, and Murray's department store was bombed out in the 1980s. So we don't know quite where Ballynahinch is going. We see how it's accommodated to the motor car. But then what will happen once the bypass will come eventually? So what will Ballynahinch look like then? Will it go back to having empty streets? Will the town centre become a pleasant place? Will the kids be playing on the pavements again? You can't see the shops coming back to Ballynahinch, but will those houses then be changed to residential? Well, if the streets are nice and quiet, then it might be quite nice to live in a house on the street in Ballynahinch. So it'll be interesting the bypass will come, and it will be interesting to see the final effects on Ballynahinch and how the centre of the town can eventually be regenerated. So there's the. I'd like to thank people who have helped me put this together. Sidney McCulloch, who was the headmaster of the high school in 1968, he wrote Ballynahinch, the Centre of Down. So Sir Charles Brett says it's a wonderful book. He says a local history written by Mr. McCulloch is outstandingly good, and it is. If you can get your hands on one, it's a great source for the history of Ballynahinch. Peter Carr wrote 2 books on Portavoe. Portavoe is where the Carrs started off as a dynasty, but that's the Carrs of Montalto. So if you want to know about the Carrs of Montalto, you'll get the details in those 2 books there. Gerard Sloan, a retired school teacher, has been very useful to me. All the old photographs of Ballynahinch, he's got a wonderful collection of photographs, and I've used them. And then the late Tom Harris, he let me wander around the mill on Church Road and have a look at it. So 4 videos telling you over 1,000 years of Ballynahinch history. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about that.